Hello and welcome back to Just Another Football Podcast. Back again. It's the one everyone's been waiting for, building up to the start of the season in a few days' time, and we're going to be giving our predictions. I'm back hosting as Ali's nursing a bit of illness, but he is here. He is a trooper,
Hi.
as a Fergal and George for the evening, boys. I'm
Hello.
excited for this one.
Oh, I am. And just on another quick note for the viewer on YouTube, you might have seen our faces last time. You're not now because I'm on my laptop because I just moved and had to switch things around, so don't have my PC set up yet. So yeah, just gonna have to bear with whatever's on the screen. I'll do my best to kind of
Yeah,
edit it. So
that's fine.
we'll see.
That's fine, mate. Yeah, well, they're going to have to just put up with whatever nonsense we come out with.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on. We're going to split this into two because there's a lot to talk about, I think, in terms of the predictions here. And so this will be spread across two episodes. We're going to look at last season's table and kind of go on a team-by-team basis, look at them, predict where we think they're going to finish. There's definitely going to be disagreements here. It's going to be controversial.
Yeah.
And we're looking forwards to it. Before we get into the predictions, however, there is an English success that we have to bring up, and I can see Fergal's disgust as I at the mere mention of it. The England women did bring it home, got it done for the nation, 2-1 over Germany. We finally ended the Germany curse by the looks of it, beat them in the Euros last year and then yesterday. I mean, I was absolutely convinced once they equalised, we'd find a way of bottling it in typical English
Can I just
fashion.
say, the BBC commentators weren't doing these any favors. They
No,
were ridiculously biased.
they always are, mate.
I mean,
it was
obviously because
70.
it's the
No, Ali. There's like the BBC.
Yeah,
In all fairness, they're usually quite measured at being positive about the home nation teams and
Okay.
especially about England, but not stepping over the mark. There was 15 minutes to go, and the commentator and the
Co-commentator.
pundit, but the two of them were like getting giddy, and I think they were like 15 minutes to go. Hopefully we hold on here. like the commentator even said something like that. They were actually ridiculous. And then when they won, they said something like the whole world should be proud of this England team. Like it
Yeah, it's
it
not
really
quite how it
didn't.
works.
It was ridiculous. Like it was brilliant occasion.
You're not bitter
all
at
the
all,
rest of it,
Fergal.
and it was a really good game. I watched the whole thing, really enjoyed it. But they fucking done everything they could to stop me from enjoying that game. Jesus.
Did you really enjoy it, honestly?
No, I did. I did.
enjoyed the football,
And you know
not the
what? You know
commentators.
what? Watching England win, especially the women's team, because I don't follow the women's game, it didn't have the lasting effect. You know, there's no Declan Rices for me in the women's team to get pissed off at. So I did have me Germany top on, but I didn't mind really in the end. It wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
I would say, just to, I guess, I don't know, defend or excuse the type of commentary from BBC, and I watched the highlights of BBC and from ESPN, who broadcasts here, wasn't able to watch it, the game itself. But I don't have a problem with biased commentary in international competitions from the nation that hosts it, like BBC with England, or the Icelandic commentators from Euro 2016, or the Welsh commentators from Euro 2016. This type of thing. Every country will have biased commentators for their country, and I think that's good.
The BBC don't
Except-
represent England and England alone.
That's my next point. Except that BBC broadcasts in Ireland too, and Northern Ireland, and Wales, and Scotland. So, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting dynamic because BBC is the broadcaster in England, and yeah,
In the UK.
well, in England specifically in that case. So how are you gonna get, if every other country has the same type of commentary? Why not England? But I guess the counterpoint to that is it's not only England that's broadcasting. But
I don't mind a certain bias. They just went way over the top with it. Way over the top.
anyway,
Seem surprised, mate. Partisan commentary is nothing new, especially when it comes to international football.
Sky Sports
usually,
these days.
Whenever there's an England game on for the World Cup, I usually watch the Irish commentary instead. I can't stand it. But I was
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't get the Irish commentary, so I was stuck with them waxing lyrical and saying how proud the whole world is. Couldn't get over that comment.
I think
That's the most
this
English
is
thing I've ever heard in my life.
yeah.
It's so self-important.
They are, but at the same time, I don't know if they were talking. They might have possibly been talking about the context where last time England won a major tournament, which was the only time women weren't allowed to play the sport, anyways. So, in terms of the progress England have been able to do,
You can say you're
for
proud
the game
of
globally,
the women's
I
game.
guess.
They specifically said they're proud of the England team.
Yeah.
No, it was specifically about the England team. It wasn't like, what a great occasion. This tournament is something that, UEFA and all women in Europe should be proud of. It was they should be proud of this English team. I couldn't.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
But you've mentioned the more important thing, though, which is that it was a great spectacle. I mean, to get
Yeah.
87,000 into Wembley for the women's Euros
It's a
final.
record for all Euros, men and women.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well, there you go.
Well,
So,
did we know what numbers were at the last Euros final?
well, it wasn't the full
Like-
capacity. I mean, to be fair, yeah, that's a good. Well,
Everyone.
This is
that's
what
a good
I mean.
point. I mean, it
Do
might
we
as
know
well
the
have
exact
been.
numbers
Yeah.
that we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. The it was
That
sort of almost
that was
like.
another good bonus. Went by without any problems. It seems like
You know what though? That is like the reverse of what usually happens when they'll like do the, particularly at the Emirates. I remember they used to literally tell you what the attendance was like in the ground. Be like, oh, congratulations, the attendance today was 59,000. You'd be looking around the ground, there'd be like 5,000 empty seats. You're like, yeah, that's absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
At the Euros final, it was they said, oh, this was the attendance. It was probably about 10,000 more than what they would actually brief you as what it was. It was yeah, don't need to relitigate that one.
So for attendance, just a quick note, it's calculated by actual people who have access to the game, regardless of season ticket holders who didn't attend, potentially, or people who bought tickets.
Yeah, they skew the figures, mate. Don't worry.
Or these things, the corporate tickets that didn't show up, or
Yeah.
whatever. So all of that's taken into account, and it's always higher than the actual number.
No,
But-
I know. It's just quite funny when you're there and you just know it's
Yeah.
bullshit, and they'll say it anyway. But they don't do it anymore because it just became comical. But anyway,
one more thing, I just want to shout out the Elatoon goal, because there are very few players that have the bottle to chip the goalkeeper like that in a final, when she could have easily slid on between her.
had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, she did have a lot of time, but
No, that I'm saying, like it wasn't like instinctive. I sort of value those finishes more sometimes, where they're running through on goal, especially in an occasion like that, and you have a lot of time to think about what you're going to do, and execute it, and it can be a lot harder than it sounds. Where sometimes, like, you see some great finishes, but it comes to you and you hit it, like that is great. But it was a great finish.
It was your only option, so you had to hit it that way.
Yeah, whereas that was it was
saved easy.
Great finish.
But no, hopefully more people will now show up to the NWSL games and we actually start.
Well, they don't do themselves any favors. I saw they were talking about it afterwards with the kickoff times, especially. They're like 7, 8 in the evening. A lot of them on Sundays. It's like it's just not when people really want to go and watch football. I mean, I remember like in the lockdown season, the Premier League games were starting at 7:30 on a Sunday, and it's just not traditionally a good time for football to be played. And so I think just with little things like that, I think it's just little things like that. Like if they want the attendance to go up, like the ticket prices are really accessible. I saw this morning, I think the most expensive for an adult is like £12, and that's at Arsenal, who are traditionally one of the best teams. So it's like it's pretty easy to go and watch.
Yeah.
It's affordable. I think it's just small changes, sort of like
it was amazing to me. Alex Scott, like. After at the end of it all and throughout it, because it was such a big occasion, they had the moments to have a pick at a pop up some of the things that have been done in the past, and like sort of point out where things have previously been done wrong. One of them was like, apparently there's loads of clubs that turned down the opportunity in 2018 to host, because they knew this tournament was happening, and they went around the clubs. Would you like to host a game of the Women's Euros? And that's why MK Dons end up getting games, because so many turned down, and
I don't think they'll turn it down again.
Yeah, that was the point I was making. That like Alex Scott was saying, like, you regret that one. You could have been part of this amazing occasion, and you chose to turn it down.
Yeah.
100%.
I was amazed games were being held in like Rotherham. I thought that in Manchester City's like
Women's. It
women's
looks like a
ground
good
or
round.
youth ground, that that was a little bit of a disappointing element. But to have a record-breaking final like this is
Yeah.
crazy.
No, it's good. It's good for the sport.
It's real good.
No doubt. Whatever the result was yesterday, getting 90,000 people into the game, it's only going to further the growth of it. And I think overall that's a good thing. So
Hopefully so.
right to acknowledge that. And congratulations to them. They brought it home. They did something the men couldn't do, which actually, well, they didn't hold on to the lead, but then they retook it and got it done.
Just as we're on that point, my friend made the point. Does this help the men's team or hinder them in terms of adding pressure on? Have they broken the barrier and shown the men what is possible to do for an England
that's
team,
interesting.
or have they heightened the pressure on and going? They've laid down the gauntlet and gone, we've done it. Now you go do
I
it.
think the only thing that they've shown is having absolutely no Spurs players in the squad is the recipe for success. I think that's the only thing I took from it.
Absolutely.
And
Having
having
an
a Spurs
Arsenal captain
player as the
versus a
captain.
Spurs captain.
Yeah, there are levels to this. We don't have to mention who missed the penalties or anything like that. It's all about who you captain by, who's leading you out. No, it's an interesting question. I think that you can look at it both ways. Like on one hand, they've shown that good things can happen for this country, because it sort of does feel like sometimes in some of these tournaments it isn't meant to be. But then on the other hand, they've gone and won something, and so I think we need to reevaluate our expectations for the England men's team, because I feel like sometimes we get to the latter stages and people celebrate it like it is a trophy, and I don't know, but my expectations are as by far the most heavily resourced national team worldwide. Most money goes into the game in England.
Yeah.
We should be doing a lot better than what we have been. So, I expect us to start winning tournaments. Doesn't mean it will happen though.
Well, the England have done it for you. So if the men's don't win it in 2 years' time, at least the women did.
Or in a few months' time.
Or a few months' time. That's true. Why am I thinking of just the Euros? What an idiot.
Because I don't think anyone wants to acknowledge what's coming in the winter. We can talk about that later today. Let's move on.
Yep.
To the predictions. The big moment here, because I'm looking to defend my crown from last season.
Oh yeah.
So we've all done our 1 to 20s. As I said, this will be split into 2 parts because it's just loads to go through.
Yep.
We're going to start from the bottom, look at the 3 promoted teams, and then move up from there. Eventually get to our Premier League winners. So starting off at the bottom, you got Nottingham Forest, who came up through the playoffs last season. And I think last season it was Brentford for me. This season it's Nottingham Forest, where a bit of an unknown entity. I feel like we've seen Bournemouth and seen Fulham before, and we'll come on to them in a second. Nottingham Forest obviously haven't been in the Premier League for a couple of decades now. And, there's just unknowns, I think, especially when you consider how badly they started last season and they sort of went on this miraculous run under Steve Cooper to even get into the playoffs. Obviously knocked Arsenal out the FA Cup as well. And, for mine, looked every bit a Premier League team. And so, how do we think they're going to fare? Because the thing I would say before we sort of discuss this maybe is, I think as a promoted side, you have to have something unique when you come up. I think what you've seen in the last few years is some of these sides that have come up and been very good in the championship and bossed the championship and kind of gone straight up and just expected that to translate into success in the Premier League, have found it really tough going. So how do we think they're going to get on?
I think they'll do the best out of all the promoted clubs.
Yes.
I have them staying up.
Mm-hmm.
In 16th. Yeah, 16th. I think that they'll be a bit like Leeds when they come up, like being a big side that haven't been in the Premier League. There'll be a real buzz around them, and that will probably carry them to some extent. Like you saw that with Brentford, like the first game against Arsenal, or it wasn't the first game, but the game against Arsenal. It was, yeah.
It was, yeah.
Like that sort of atmosphere can carry you for a couple of games, maybe get a couple of wins, and if you're down near the bottom, a couple of wins is worth an awful lot. But I think they'll do well with that, and then I think their recruitment has been the best of all the teams that have come up, and they've got a brilliant manager. Like it should like
Yeah.
if he had him the whole of last season,
They probably would have
where
won it.
would they've been? Like yeah, so
Yeah.
I think I'm excited to see them, and they showed it in the FA Cup as well that they can put up against the best in the Premier League. So
I really agree, and there's a point to be made about how many signings they've made. They've made plenty in every position, but I think they have been clear upgrades on what they've had, or important replacements that are just as good or better than those that left. So Julian Biancone and Nico Williams, or Biancone and Nico Williams to replace Jet Spence, for example. Signing Omar Richards on the left hand side and Harry Toffolo. Musa Niakate and Taiwo Awani are two of the most unbelievable signings for the level of player versus level of team they're going to. And we've talked about this before of like, why are they taking such a, kind of perceived step down from
Money.
where they were? Money, yes, but I think they're going to be absolutely fine. I have them 15th. Actually, I think they're going to
Similarly,
be the
yeah.
last team to not be fighting relegation come the end of the season, so not to be in touch with relegation. It's because I think all the other teams can potentially get relegated that I have from 16th down. But
Yeah.
Nottingham will be fine.
I agree. So I have them 14th, and I think 14th, 15th, 16th. It could be any of those positions. George, on the other hand, disagrees with all of us, and I'm interested to know why.
Really strongly. I think you've got an untested manager who's yes done extremely well, and in terms of being in the Championship, he's been absolutely fantastic. There's no doubt there. But there's been a lot of very, very good Championship managers that can't do it in the Premier League. A lot, and unfortunately, he's only done it for 1 year in the Championship. He is generally unproven. I mean,
Did a good job with Swansea as well.
He did okay, yeah. Swansea are a pretty big team that have been around in the Premier League, the past sort of decade or so. But on top of that, the volume of signings we've seen in the past be really destructive for teams. You look at Brentford and they didn't go mad with signings. They kept a good core of the squad. Obviously, they used signings of sort of Ericsson to boost them, keep them up. Nottingham have done what I believe will be a Fulham, and they've replaced the entire squad. There's not a lot of time to gel, but and adopt the style of play. I think we're overhyping some of the players that have honestly been signed. Jesse Lingard, I think, is overhyped.
No,
But he's good for Nottingham Forest, though.
No, he's fine for Nottingham Forest, but he's not going to keep them up. He's not an Ericsson, and on top of that, you've got players. You're talking about Omar Richards. You're talking about other players that haven't played in the Premier League. Taiwo Awani, never going to be able to say that
been one
name.
of the top goal scorers in the Bundesliga.
I don't know. After one season, we've also seen Timo Werner be one of scored 28 goals in the Bundesliga with extremely high lines. Again, he's a very similar player. Obviously, Nottingham's style of play. The style of play is going to lend it to him scoring goals, but really, can you put that much weight on such a young player? I don't think so, and I look at the other promoted sides, and they've got established strikers who I think are fairly suited for the Premier League, very physical, who will do a lot better. So I predicted Nottingham to finish last.
I don't think it's outrageous. I don't think it's outrageous.
No. I just think there's just seems to feel the sort of same energy as Leeds, as real excitement about the team, and a really good coach, and then I do think that there probably is too many signings. Like they've basically brought in all new wing backs, and then a new spine to the team in some regard. Brennan Johnson, though, he looks terrific, and he's a real X factor about him. That I think, along with the other quality players that they have, I think Lingard's an absolutely brilliant signing for Nottingham Forest. I think he'll get a combo of 10 goals, and a combination. His goals and assists will be 10.
Yeah, there we go. Easy for you to say.
What's the normal way of saying that? Goal contributions will be 10.
There we go.
Yeah, what I would say, and we sat on this podcast last year and spoke about Norwich and what they do every time they come up, where they don't sign anyone. They keep the same core group and they have a different model where essentially they're trying to make money on players if they go back down, and spoke about it lacking ambition. And I think this is the opposite. I think at least they're having a go. They're bringing players in. It might not work. Like, we don't know. There is a lot of unknowns here. And I will happily say that this is one of my predictions I'm least certain about. They could flop and be a disaster. But I agree with Fogel. I just think that the energy that will come with them being back in the Premier League, I think they've got a good manager and they're having a go. And I have to say, I give them the best chance of any of the three that have been promoted of staying up.
The other thing as well that's just come into my head is they've signed a good few from the Championship or English players, and I always think that helps. So I think sometimes Norwich they're signing players from all over Europe that are having to acclimatise so much. I feel like a lot of the main players for Nottingham Forest are players that have either previously played in England, are English, or have played in the Championship, and I think that'll help them as well.
I will say, just on Norwich, Harry, last year I remember there being really perceived good signings for Norwich. The Rashitsas, the Plachetas, the Limalos, the
Billy
Gilmore on loan. And I remember feeling quite excited about that. So signings are not always an indication. So let's see. Let's wait and see. I think of you being they can finish above relegation zone. I'm pretty confident.
I think you'll know within the first 5 games.
Yeah.
What sort of a season it'll be. It'll definitely be close run as to whether they get relegated until the very end. But I think as to if they're going to be down there for the whole season, I think you'll know within the first 5 game weeks.
Right.
Yeah. So moving it on, Bournemouth. Now, Bournemouth finished second last season.
Harry, there's not much to say about Bournemouth.
You don't think? I was going to say, can anyone make the case?
No.
Can anyone make the case?
No, they're going down in 19th for me.
19th for me as well.
Yeah. What do I have them? Do I have them 20th?
Yeah,
I have them 20th. I have them rock bottom. But in my research, I don't know if this is right. But has Billing been playing like an attacking mid role?
Philip Billing has been playing a more progressive role with them, yes. Than he was with Huddersfield.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I guess for Bournemouth fans to take away is that Dominic Solanke could have a good season. You know, he had a good Championship season, but they don't have the manager, do they? Like the manager, I'm just not convinced by Parker, and I like him, but he's not a Premier League quality manager. And you look at the teams around, teams above them. I think we've got a really competitive Premier League. Bournemouth aren't going to be in that.
I struggle to make the case for them. I don't think he's done badly. If you look at it, right, he took over Fulham. He didn't disgrace himself. He brought them back up. And to be honest, they weren't even that bad. Like, by their standards, they weren't terrible the last time they were in the league, Fulham. And then he's gone to Bournemouth and got them promoted. Okay, you could say they probably should be getting promoted when you look at
they were ridiculous, the squad they had.
Yeah, they're a good Championship side. They should be, well up there. But he's done what's asked of him to this point. But I do agree with you that if you're looking at that squad and thinking, okay, you really need an exceptional manager here to even give him a fighting chance.
Yeah.
I just think at this stage in his managerial career, you can't say he's that with any certainty. And so I agree. Like, I have him 20th. I don't think there's that much more to be said in truth. Sorry to any Bournemouth fans who might be listening.
The other thing, Scott Parker hasn't been very positive in his recent interviews.
No.
He's been quite down on the defence and he's openly worried that they haven't got the numbers and they might have to play four at the back, and he doesn't back them playing four at the back if they have to. So
Not looking
there's a
good.
lot that could go wrong
Yeah.
with Bournemouth.
There
I
is.
think
There
it
is.
will go wrong.
Yeah.
I will say
And
it looks like they might play four at the back because they have three center backs at the moment in the entire squad.
well, no, it's quite funny. So on that note, on a similar note, talking about Fulham, and Marco
Yeah.
Silva was asked literally yesterday or the day before about whether they need some additions, and he said, "You're being positive when asked if they need one or two additions. We have 16 senior players in our squad.
Yeah.
No one can compete at this level with 16. No one can prepare a season with two central defenders at this level." Now, that's the Fulham manager telling you that on the eve of the season. Are any of us going to sit here and argue with him? I mean, he's basically condemning them to relegation.
I've got them 18th.
too.
Obviously, relegation is going to happen for Fulham this year, whether it's
A nice
dead
away
last. Yeah, it's
Probably my
it's
favourite
a
away
lovely
ground
part
in
of
the league.
London.
It is.
Yeah, it's
Fulham fans must be sick of hearing that. Like that
yeah,
is literally
yeah,
the
that's it.
Well,
That's
no,
it.
it's
the thing for any English match going fan. Is I love Louis spot.
It's an easy 3 points as well. It's not
Yeah.
hostile. It's a lovely location, and you'll watch your team probably beat them, and then
Yeah.
they'll get relegated, and they'll come back probably at the first time of asking. Like we're well aware of the cycle by now, and there's just nothing in this window. I know it's maybe I'm being a bit unfair, but I'm not seeing anything in their transfer business. I think Marco Silva's a decent manager. I think when you
I
look
agree.
at what Everton have done since he left, I know he spent money there, but they've hardly gotten any better since they got rid of him. So I think the problems there were deeper than him, and that wasn't necessarily what people made out at the time. And I think he, did well with Fulham, but I don't see it. I can't see how they'll stay up.
I really like Marco Silva. Another sort of gem in that side. I know Ali disagrees. Is Mitrovic? He scored 43 goals, breaking a record ever scored, I believe, in an English league in 46 games. That is disgusting.
I think he gets 10 goals this season.
If he doesn't get at least
easily.
10, like it's just bizarre.
Well,
Like,
on average, you get 25% of the goals that you score in the Championship in the Premier League strikers. So 10 goals. I mean, that is 10 goals. So obviously there's fewer games.
He wasn't even starting last time they were in the Premier League.
Yeah,
because he's been up a couple of times.
Yeah, Scott Parker didn't like.
I've watched him live quite a few times, and I'm pretty impressed by his presence. Whether he can keep disciplined is just the problem with Mitrovic.
Yeah,
he does really well for Serbia as well. Like
he's a monster.
He is a quality striker, and it's just but it hasn't clicked from as well as it could in the past. And then there's that Portuguese fella that everybody's raving about. I've never heard of.
João Palhinha, and they were right, dude. This is one of those bizarre transfers. Like, why are you choosing Fulham? Like,
it smells of a Jean-Michel Seri to me.
Yeah, you're so right. You're so right. It's like you could have had your pick of clubs. You're a starting Portugal national team player, and I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway.
Yeah, I think so. We're all agreed.
18th.
I think Fulham. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got them 19th, but I can't. I struggle to see them staying up.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving on.
Yep.
Leeds United. Now, I think this might be a bit divisive because Leeds have done a lot of business, but they've also sold probably the two best players, and so for me, it's difficult to assess where they're at the moment. Like, on the one hand, I think that the signings they've made are coherent, and you could argue that the sum of their parts will now be greater as a result of that. On the other hand, they aren't staying up without Rafinha in particular last season. Like, absolutely no chance. And I just struggle to believe that any one player will contribute as much towards this campaign as he did. And so you're really relying on them being better overall. And I just think there's unknowns there.
You do. Because last season, and that's not to make an excuse because this is a fact, their squad throughout was so thin. They handed a record number of Premier League debuts over a season. It was like something like 11. So unless something drastic like this happens, they now have good depth in pretty much every position. I think they need a left back. But
Yeah,
unless something
definitely.
drastic like this happens, I think they have replaced Rafinha and wait, who else did they sell?
Calvin
Rafinha
Phillips.
and
Phillips.
Calvin Phillips. I think they have replaced them very well. With Luis Sinistero, of course. Brendan Aronson is my one player to watch, not just because he was a Philadelphia Union player and is American, but I would keep my eye on Brendan Aronson. He's so creative and quick and like dribbly, and will progress it in both ways, dribbling and progressive passing. I think we saw a snapshot of that. They were playing a friendly yesterday, and he kind of dribbled around 3 general players and then put one outside of the boot between the 2 center backs and behind for Bamford, put him right through on goal. But also Tyler Adams and Mark Roca, and it seems nailed on that Jesse Marsh is going to go 4-2-3-1, and Adams and Roca will be the ones starting up.
Yeah, Adams in midfield.
Yeah, definitely.
No, because I don't know. Because we were linked with him a few years ago, but he was playing right back, so I didn't know if he's a right back or a centre mid now.
Yeah,
he's a center mid
centre
now.
mid.
He is a center mid. He's
Yeah.
permanently there. With
I've had a look at where I've put Leeds, and now thinking that's too high up.
I have them 9th, and I don't think it's too high. I have them 9th, and I don't think it's too high.
That's brave.
I have
brave,
them
Ali.
11th.
I know it was a rave, yeah.
I think that's a bit fairer. I think 11th, I can reason with that. I don't agree with it.
What kind of got me in 11th there goes, I do think the signings, for some reason I just have a feeling most of the signings would do okay. Don't know why I get that feeling, but I just get that feeling about it. Even
Because
though
they're all
actually
really
probably more
fantastic players.
outrageous than the Nottingham Forest signings. But I do think that most of these signings are going to do okay, and they've got Bamford back, and Gallagher has now got a season under him. I think that they're not going to be better going forward as they were last season, but that I think it's more in the defense, and I think
they have to be better defensively.
They will just be better defensively. I'm convinced of that.
But they'll have to be, because you can't. Yeah, go for it, George.
Well, yeah, I've got Leeds doing better than last year in 16th place. So yeah, massive improvement for a team like that. That defense, I'm really not. I know you say they have to be better, but Liam Cooper, Sturridge, Llorente, it's Cock. It's not really. I'm not buying it.
No, I'm saying they have to be better, as in they literally will have to perform better.
Yeah.
If they don't, they'll be down. I'm not saying I think they will. I'm very skeptical, mate. I've got them 17th, so that should tell you.
Oh my god,
I don't have a lot of faith in them at all.
And then Daniel James, I'm really not bought in by. I mean, I like Gelhardt. Can he lead a line? I'm not convinced. Bamford has had one good season in the Premier League. Again, can we really?
I think
claim for him to
reliable.
be a top. Can we claim that? I don't know. I'm not fully convinced by Bamford.
I have him in
fits
my
into the system,
football.
and I appreciate that. But I think that's pretty brave, Fergal, considering his injury record and
sorry,
inconsistency.
I should caveat that with if he stays fit. But and I don't think he's been awful for injuries other than last season.
Oh, he was.
Am I wrong?
Yeah, he barely. Let's pull up FVRF here and see what Bamford played. I'm convinced.
Yeah,
the other player is my question. He played 690s last season.
No.
Last season it was
other than last season though.
Oh, the season before it was 34.
Yeah.
It's the question.
I don't remember having terrible injuries apart from last season.
I think part of it with last season as well is because of the lack of squad depth. They had to rush him back a couple of times, and then he aggravated injuries again.
Yeah.
So it all stems down to that. And where I will agree with you is they will have more numbers next season, like no doubt about it. and maybe you are better subbed. I think particularly, and we might mention this like multiple times, with 5 subs next season and with the World Cup in the middle of the season, there's going to be a premium on having squad depth. You're not going to get away with having 11 players every week, and so. But I've got them 17th.
And the young players that they blooded last season, like JAFP, but there were other ones. If they need to rely on them, at least they'll be that little bit better. And if other clubs have to rely on youth, they won't have had that experience.
I think they'll just about do enough for me, but there's too many risks at the moment for me to go any higher. But I do understand. I understand 11th. I'd be very surprised if they crack top half, but that's what we're all here for. Moving on, Everton. Ali, I'm going to come to you first.
Rock bottom.
Bomb.
And Frank Lampard first sacked.
Now I think that's, not beyond the realms of possibility. But I think I'd be surprised they were rock bottom.
I think you're making the same mistake as I did with Tottenham last year. I was licking my lips going, Tottenham are going to be so bad. And they were, but then they sacked the manager and got someone else.
That's a great point.
But
that's a great point.
I think if Everton are going to have a terrible season, they'll sack the manager, and I think Dyche is there.
Sean Dyche,
Well, Sean Dyche is going to come in and it's not going to do any better.
No, I think he will.
Dyche is the best Premier League manager.
I think that's a really
Sean
good
Dyche
point.
won't come bottom, so you'd be wrong by at least one.
Do you know what? That is a great point from Vogel. It's one I've heard made before as well by other people. Say, I predicted Tottenham to finish 10th, and I feel vindicated because they were heading towards 10th, and then they sacked Nuno and brought Conte in. And I think in this instance,
just thought the next step ahead. Well, if they're that far down, they're not going to stick with him, and they'll.
If you're, to be honest with you, what I would say with Everton, because I've got them 18th at the moment, at this moment in time, and granted they could still bring players in, and of course you've got to factor in they could well get rid of Lampard because I do think he's not the solution long term. There's very much an us and them mentality from Lampard at times, and he's already started it with a couple of the questions he's had.
It's mental how intelligent he is, but yeah,
his management is bizarre at times. It really doesn't do himself any favors with some of the stuff he says. And on the eve of a season, to be coming out with stuff where you're essentially putting it all on the players isn't the best look. But the squad is poor. I mean, there's no way of dressing it up. The squad is poor.
I don't agree.
George, they played Minnesota, right? And I know it's preseason, right? It's preseason. You can't over-index the results. They lost 4-0. It was their best. It was arguably their best starting 11 they put out to start that game. I looked at that starting 11 and I thought, of all the players they could field, it's actually a pretty good team by their standards. They lost 4-0.
I don't know. I don't buy into this. They're not a good team. I think there's a lot of questions of Frank Lampard.
They won 9 games last season,
and rightfully so. But I don't think they're as bad. I've got them 13th, which might be a bit generous. But
can I just say, so
if you walk through some of the core of the squad. If you walk through the core of the squad, Jordan Pickford is England number 1. You've got James Tarkowski, who's a good signing. Doucouré is a solid player, a very solid player. So is Allen. Rest of their centre mids, I think, are poor. I would admit that. Dwight McNeil is a good signing. Calvert-Lewin, if he can stay fit, is absolutely crucial for this Everton team, especially if they're going to play fairly direct, as it does seem like they will. There will be a few more signings. I'm pretty certain of that as well.
Will there?
I don't know. I don't buy that this team is as poor as sort of Leeds, as Southampton, as Fulham, as Bournemouth, as Nottingham Forest. It's just not.
Can I just raise a point here?
Pause. Are you seriously saying Everton have a better squad than Leeds?
Yes, they've got a way better.
I actually get his point. I think that if you're going player for player, I think they're probably a better defense than Leeds.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Well, one thing I would say, Everton, and I don't think this can be disputed, are the worst team away from home in the Premier League, and I will not hear otherwise. They are dreadful. How many away games did they win last season? Was it 2? 1? They were dismal. So if they're going to be finishing like upper mid-table, as you're predicting, they're going to have to do the bulk of that work at home, which, granted, it's a tough place to go. I mean, Chelsea know all too well, and we're pretty poor there as well. So I do know it's a hard place to go and win when they get the atmosphere going there. but they're putting pressure on themselves by being so poor away from home that those home games then have an added importance on them. And I think they know it every week. Lampard speaks about it all the time. He speaks about how he loves playing at home and he looks forward to the home games. I don't think that's the right mentality to be sending the team out with, because they go to these away games and they fold. They're rubbish. They offer nothing.
I have them going down, but George just kind of swayed me because I was kind of just like in my head, but like the defense, I think the defense. This is what with Everton and United, both are being dragged down by sort of just toxicity, like player for player. I think if Everton goes down, they get absolutely raided. I think by a lot of the Premier League teams.
Oh yeah.
They go, you know what? He was part of a bad team. We'll take a chance on him. The likes of Godfrey and Tarkowski.
Not a good defender,
Dean,
Godfrey.
Pickford,
Not a good defender.
DCL.
Coleman, Decore, Allen, Calvert-Lewin. Like I think literally most of that first team would go if or have interest in them if they went down. And so yeah, I'm looking at them. I think they could do better, but I think the atmosphere is just terrible there, and I don't think Lampard's helping.
No, he's not.
And I think it'll just. I think it'll depend on just how quickly they sack Lampard. I can't believe I'm saying that.
Well, he will be for a sack.
I think he still hasn't fucking twigged as to how to get players on side and build a good team atmosphere. He's still coming out with the same rubbish, and I think I have them going down. I could see them staying up though. I don't think it's impossible. I think there's Southampton, Nottingham, and then even a couple of teams up above that I think could do worse, or Everton could do maybe actually have a good season, do better.
Yeah. I think the point about Lampard's a fair one, and I think if they got Dyche and we revisit these predictions in January, then I'm prepared. But at this moment in time, I think they could well get relegated, and that is where I'm going to put them for now.
Yeah. What position though?
All of you put Everton.
I had them rock bottom. I had them rock bottom, which I think is a
really
bit excessive. I've got them 18th. Fergal's got them 18th, and you've got them 13th, which I think is a bit too high. I think they're going to be in the conversation again.
Yeah, the funny thing for me is like, so the preseason, just looking at, they played Arsenal, then they played Minnesota, and it's almost like, I'm sure they were all pre-organized, but it's almost like they've gone, geez, we really could do with a win here, right? Blackpool, we'll play them, and then Dynamo Kiev, who I don't know where Dynamo Kiev are playing.
I don't know how they're playing. How many players they've got. They're all on the front lines.
That was proper, like, get the confidence up fixture.
Get the morale up.
And they still conceded to the Blackpool.
Anyway. Ali doesn't like Everton, for those of you that haven't gathered to this point.
I just like probably every aspect about Everton.
There you go. So.
You lost your point. Your good point about that you like to make, Ali. They're no longer vanilla. Now they are like.
Oh no, they aren't vanilla anymore, because until last season, they would be. They'll stay up, but they won't challenge for absolutely anything at all. Like, they were the most irrelevant team in the Premier League until last season, and that changed.
I'm trying to think of what the worst ice cream is, but all ice cream is pretty nice.
Yeah,
maybe like
even vanilla. I could go for vanilla. It's nice.
I love lemon raisin.
I just think of vanilla
kiwi,
as a very standard,
something like that.
taste.
Like sort of a bland fruit.
Yeah.
Slightly rotten.
Let us know what are Everton as an ice cream. What
if
is
every
the
Premier League team was an ice cream.
Yeah, let us know.
What would you give Southampton? What would you give
Southampton? Yeah, maybe.
I think we've stumbled across a new feature, guys.
yeah, absolutely. It's what we're here for.
Yay!
Southampton. I've got to say, Southampton. I've seen a lot of people putting Southampton in the bottom three, and what I would say on that is Southampton do the same thing every single season, where they make themselves safe pretty early on, like by March or February, and they are dreadful for the rest. I think they've won one of the last 10 games, which was against Arsenal, typically. But But I remember they played Norwich on the 25th of February, because I've gone and looked up the date. The 25th of February, Friday night football. They beat them 2-0 and they went 10th. And I remember the discussion that night was, is this kind of as good as it gets for them? Because it was clear at that point they were clear of relegation, but they're also not going to push for, Europe. They're not going to get into the top 6, top 7. And I feel like they do this every season where they're safe by the point it actually kind of gets to crunch time with relegation. I can't remember them being in many relegation battles per se. But then if you look at it last season, they weren't actually that far clear by the end of the 38 games. And I think that's where people get a bit fooled with them. Is it a qualitative issue? Is it that they run out of steam because obviously the way they play, they have a small squad? Do they run out physically? I don't know. I think Brozier would be a big loss for them, but I can't see them going down. I think there's 3 worse teams than them.
I think will get sacked this season.
I think it'll be first sacked for me. He's first sacked.
Outrageous.
I have them in 17, so I think they'll stay up, and I also think that I think they'll be close, but I think the bottom 3 will really be done and dusted well before. And I think Southampton will be. I think they'll stay up. There's a couple of questionable players in there, but I think they'll have a decent spine. I think the centre backs are actually quite good.
Yeah.
And they're full. Like the back 4 is actually really solid. Like once Livermore comes back, and Bednarak, Salisu, who people were raving about last season, and Kyle Walker-Peters, and then I'll just mention his name. I won't rave on about him. Bazuna have gone up and gone.
That's why you haven't got them being relegated. That's the sole reason.
It was. But that's because I think he will do well. And then they have James Ward-Prowse, who's gonna he'll probably break the free kick record this season, will he?
Yeah,
he's good for a couple at least.
5 more, I think.
Or is it? Maybe not this season, but Aribo looks good, and I think they'll be solid enough, and I think they'll sack Hasenhüttl, and they're the sort of team they always seem to get a decent manager, and they'll get someone else in that'll do better.
Their wingers really worry me. Stuart Armstrong, Theo Walcott, Elyounoussi. That really worries me a lot. But they'll stay up. I got them 17th. Che Adams up front. Adam Armstrong's okay, but losing a couple players.
Losing Brozier's big. Although to be fair, he fell off at the end of last season. He didn't really.
He did, but like you said, he kept them up because of the first half of the season performance. So they could well finish 13th, but I've got them 17th. I think, like Fergal said, I think the bottom 3, the promoted 3 for me, they'll be long gone. I think they'll be long gone. So we'll see.
Any disagreement to that, Ali?
17th. I think they could do better than 17th based on a couple of the signings they made. Joe Aribo, Amrel Kachap, who is very suited to how they want to play. He's up there in interceptions, specifically. He's 96th percentile, I think it was, in terms of 97th percentile in interceptions per 90. 91st.
That must be something they really focus on.
So they are focused on centre backs.
Because Salisu was really high in interceptions as well before he signed.
Yeah, and it's deliberate. And I think if Sycamara, if Armel Belkachap partners Mohamed Salisu in centre back, they will have a better defensive record. I feel like. Always depends on the double pivot and how they perform. The other one is Sycamara, 4.5 XG from 1090s last season. He's young. I think he's 20 years old, but that will be interesting when he gets minutes. I'm kind of keeping an eye on him a little bit. He came from Bordeaux.
I think interceptions as a defender, as a centre-back, is misleading, though, is my only worry in terms of defensive performance. Now, obviously, it means that they're pretty aggressive. They step out of their line to accept balls. And if you've got 2 intercepting centre-backs, stoppers, there's going to be a lot of space in behind for players like Werner. Yeah, players like Werner to really stat pad. Obviously, he's probably leaving Chelsea. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see.
I'm just looking at their team. Like they've got like 3 solid centre backs, no wingers, and good wing backs. Why not?
That's what they were
play
doing, though. They played the
with
back
that?
three.
Yeah.
They played a
They
back
played
three
back
wing
four
backs.
all the way through pre-season, from my knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. Anyway, moving on. Because this is where you sort of get into the section of the table where, well, it's a bit boring, basically, because you've got the teams that are kind of clear of relegation, but not necessarily pushing for Europe. Vanilla. Exactly, Ali. Well said. But no Everton.
No Everton.
Aston Villa. Now, Aston Villa, I think, are one of the more interesting ones here, because I think you can argue, certainly given what everyone was saying about them going into the season last year, and I know they'd lost Grealish, but I think generally people were expecting them to, be similar to the season before, where they finished in the top half. 14th was an underachievement for them. I think given what they've spent and what they've then spent in this summer window, if they repeat that finish, I think Gerrard's going to be very lucky to be in a job by the end of the season.
Yeah.
And so I've got them ninth, and I've got them ninth less because I think that less because I have faith in them and more because of what they've spent. That should be the expectation.
Yeah.
Actually, they do have a good starting 11 at least there if they can get it out regularly. I still worry that they don't have good enough wingers. Maybe Bailey if he gets more regular game time. But I know that sort of at times last season they were playing Buendia and Coutinho on the wing, which I just didn't rate at all.
They'll probably play a diamond, won't they? They're like
I just don't rate Danny Ings at all. Either. I don't know that they've got a good starting 11, but I don't know if it's quite balanced at times. But I expect them to do better this season. I've got them ninth.
Yeah, I've got them. I've got them in the same place. Aston Villa. I think they'll be 14th.
Hey.
I think they'll be fairly boring. Again, like you said, I mean, on paper, I really like their team. I think I'm just not convinced by Gerrard. Really, he's not really inspired me,
especially after losing Michael Beale.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think they'll have a disaster class, but I agree. I think Gerrard for me is one of those ones that could get sacked pretty early on in comparison to other managers because of the expectations they put on themselves.
Like
because
the
of the
fact
spend
they sacked Dean Smith in the position that they were, like that
absolutely.
shows such big ambition, and Gerrard's been backed as well in the transfer market. It's a big one, and then like Coutinho is he's just like so inconsistent. There's so many sort of maybe players. There's so many players who are like he's good, he's solid, but he's good, but is he good, to use an Alcott expression?
Shut up.
Like Digne, and it's a hard one. I have them 10th. I think they'll be they look like they should be solid at the back this season. Like their back four is really.
Well, now that Mings has had the captaincy taken off him, they no longer have to start him, as seems to be kind of an obligation when you're captain, which I think makes them stronger.
You know what?
Yeah.
I have them 10th too. So it's for the first time this episode, we have the entire prediction within 2 spots, 9th and 10th.
No, George has them 14th.
Oh, you have them 14th? I thought you said 10th.
George has them 14th.
Okay, 14th.
Aston Vanilla. Yeah.
Aston Vanilla. Well,
I think they'll be in that mid-table, but I don't see them pushing Europe.
Yeah.
I think it's the season too early, and I think there's too many good teams.
I like the diamond formation though, because Philadelphia Union play a diamond and are the best team in the MLS. So this is gonna be good. I like diamond formations. It works on FM too, so I'm fond of them these days.
Yeah. Well,
also
we'll
remember
see how it goes
Coutinho playing really well in an 8 in the diamond. In 2016-17, we lost Sadio Mane in April, and we were pushing for the Champions League. And Klopp changed the formation to a diamond, and Coutinho was just on another level in this 8.
Well, there you go. There's your personal connection to the diamond.
I miss him, and I want
Coutinho.
to do well. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Right, moving on. Brentford.
Yes.
Is there any danger of second season syndrome here? We've seen it with a few teams that have come into the Premier League. Leeds had it, maybe you could argue, last year, and obviously Sheffield United the year before that. Is there any danger of people figuring Brentford out this season?
Nah.
I didn't really know what to do with Brentford, but I think they'll. I was looking at their XG, and their XG was off the charts.
They were seventh. They were seventh on expected points last season.
Yeah, and I was like, I don't believe that. That is, I'm a big fan of the XG model.
It's a conspiracy.
That's.
Do you know what it was? What I felt? like they started the season strongly.
Yeah.
They were really, really poor in that middle part
They
of the
dropped
season,
off
and then they got
massively.
Ericsson, and I think that was like where you then saw them for a couple of months after getting him. They were really solid, and that's probably inflated their figures a little bit there. So it's just whether you then buy into them. Have they
I don't
sufficiently
think they've done
improved?
enough in the market so far. I don't know who this Harry Potter fella is. And I still think their manager's weird.
Harry Potter.
So I you know what?
Jesus.
I'd nearly swap. I'm there in my head going. I could see Everton coming for. I have Brentford 14th, but I done these so quickly. These predictions. I'm actually changing
All the
most in my head already.
excuses. All the
But
excuses.
I'd be tempted to put Brentford going down.
He'll be telling us all.
I feel a
Come
second season syndrome sort of thing going on.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just don't think they've done enough.
on.
I th-
Fergal.
I,
They
I,
already
I,
I've got
have a
them-
good
I
squad.
still don't know. I still don't know most of their players.
I'll
Yeah.
briefly back you up because again, I don't, I just don't know anything about Brentford. I should watch them more. I know they like you
Who's
said,
Pinnock?
they value everything on XG. That's how their manager apparently gets judged rather than actual results. He gets judged on how they're performing. I think they're finishing 15th. I just don't know any of their players.
You don't know
I don't know
anyone
their signings.
because what they
No,
do
I do.
is
No, I
sign
do.
people
No, but that's
for
what I was going to say, Ali. That's what I was going to say. That's what Ali.
that
That's
are
why
Do
I'm
you
not
good.
think
going to relegate
if they're any good
because you've got
after
to
a
trust
season
the
in the
model.
Premier League, I know who they are, though, Ali. And
Yeah.
I
No,
still don't have a clue.
It's not their fault you didn't watch any of their games. They're definitely not going down.
No, but I
They are
did. I did.
absolutely not going down.
I still don't. Apart from I'm obviously joshing a little bit. But I think they'll stay up because it's just Brentford. I think for some reason they just feel like they're one of those teams that just will for the next few years. I don't know. Who knows?
Okay, Fergal, to be clear, who do you have him as? Where do you have him to?
He had him
Have them
14th.
14th, George.
15th, but it could well be below Leeds.
I think they.
I didn't know what to do with them, so I just stuck him where they finished last season, 13th.
Yeah,
And I think-
you leave them to the end and you go, where do I have a gap?
Well, no,
Yeah.
that is literally so. When I filled mine out, I didn't do it in order. I literally did them in terms of who I was most confident would finish where. And one of the ones I had left blank was Brentford. And
Yeah.
I've just thought, you know what? I think they've got some good players there. The manager is a weirdo, but he's also pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think their underlying numbers last season were good. They clearly didn't fluke where they finished. If anything, they
Yeah.
could have finished higher. And so I think they'll be good to finish in that mid-table bit. I don't think they'll be in the relegation battle. So I just stuck them 13th. Where did you have them, Ali?
12th.
12, yeah. So
Very safe.
I'm not that worked up about what Brentford do, to be honest.
No.
Yeah, they're of little significance to me.
I could see them. I could see them like starting badly though, based on what they were like before Ericsson, and they haven't really.
Well, they
tried
signed
to
who?
replace-
They signed Damsgaard,
Thomas,
didn't they?
Strakosha, Damsgaard.
Are
is
they
not
definitely
official
signing
yet.
Damsgaard?
They're
I think it's pretty much done.
It's,
Yeah.
Maybe when the
fair.
episode goes up.
That is a good sign.
Yeah, but it's not Ericsson. Like,
No,
you
it's
know,
not
I think that is a void to fill. Now they've done it, by signing multiple players, which I think is the smart thing to do. But there's going to be an adaptation. I think that's a good shout. Actually, they could start the season a bit slowly, but I think they'll do enough.
I love Damsgaard. Can't wait to watch him play in the Premier League.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if your prediction's right. It'd be funny if they go down after how strongly you've
I'd
pitched
be
against
so
it.
disappointed. I'd be so disappointed.
I didn't know we'd invited Rob Turner on tonight's show, to be honest with you. All this defending Brentford and XG and all this sort of stuff, mate. Not for
It
me.
works. It works. It's the best team in the MLS runs on this model.
Right. Well, there you go. Must work then.
It does.
Must work. Moving on, Crystal Palace finished 12th last season. They only won 9 games last season, which was as many as Everton, which I think kind of goes a bit unnoticed because they had a good FA Cup run. They had some good high profile performances. Obviously, they beat Arsenal, did well in some other big games, got a draw against they beat Man City and drew against them, took 4 points off them. They've got a young group of players there, which I think excites people, especially when you look at the turnover they've done of the previous squad. But I think people are a little bit hot on them. I've got them 12th again. I think they'll do pretty well. By the time this podcast comes out, we're playing them first game of the season, and I'm expecting a tough game. It always is. But I think over a season, they don't win enough games against teams they're supposed to beat. But they'll be good to watch. They got some good, exciting young players, and I've kind of got them in that inoffensive mid-table category again.
Yeah.
I really, really like Crystal Palace. I have them 9th. I think they're.
Okay.
They were good on XG as well. It should be
they
mentioned.
were good on
They were
XG
8th,
last
I
season.
think. Yeah.
I think they. The difference is maybe watch Crystal Palace more, just like them more, and that's where my bias is coming in here compared to Brentford, who done better than them on XG. But I just think that they're a really exciting team, loads of attacking talent, and a young team as well. That they're going to all take another step forward this season after getting so many minutes, especially the defense of Gurhey and Anderson. They've brought in Sam Johnson Nets as well, which is great. And then there's players like Elise and Eze who are just like Eze looks like he's going to be class this season. I'm looking at him for the FPL. I think they have a bad start of fixtures, so I'll probably look to bring him in later on. But Elise, like, it's amazing. What I don't get is why they're not starting him more often. Elise is such a good player. I wish Chelsea would just go sign him now, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think he'll have a breakout season. They're lacking in the striker department, but between the three of them, I feel like they'll have an informed striker if they rotate.
Yeah.
They'll always have a striker doing pretty well, and then they have Zaha, who's just like Mr. Fantastic for them, and then they've even upgraded. They brought in Chic Decore.
He is
all the hipster nerds raving about him. So yeah, I think it's going to be another step forward for Patrick Vieira and Crystal Palace. I think they're really exciting again.
I've got them 11th. I think probably a bit too high, actually, my prediction. I think maybe sort of between that 14th and 9th. Yeah, it could potentially see it, Fergal, but I like their team. It's young, but it's inexperienced, and that can come with a lot of negatives, especially inconsistency. Do they have any leaders in that squad? Wouldn't say so.
He's captain, isn't he? And he's a great player, but he's a young player as well.
Very
Maybe
young
that
player.
speaks to a young squad.
Young
core.
And we you don't win things with kids. Obviously, that's been disproven in the past. But
I don't buy this.
I think they'll be fine. I'm not that excited.
Sorry.
I think it's sprinkled with experience. Like,
it's got good experience.
Some good pros in there.
I don't know. It feels a
Tompkins, very. Sam Johnson they just brought in. Pires has this is his 3rd year at the top now. Chic Decore is great. MacArthur, Schlupp, Edouard, Mateta, Benteke are all on the more experienced side. Zaha, Ayew, or the options are on
Nathaniel Klein at right back.
Left wing. Yeah, Klein at right back. Like they have a lot of experience. It's just that they have been reducing the average age, not necessarily have a squad full of young players that have no experience.
Yeah, that's fair.
It is
I don't think they'll be very exciting.
I have them on it too, so I mean.
I think some of their performances will be exciting, but I think across the course of the season, I just don't think they'll break into conversation for Europe, and I think they're far too good to be in a relegation battle. So you kind of just fall into that in between part. But they're a good young team. Like, they've done things the right way there in terms of they needed a rebuild.
Exciting.
They've given it, So full credit to them. But I hope we absolutely stuff them on Friday because I'm sick to death of playing them. Moving on, we'll do one more in this first part, and it's an interesting one. It's Newcastle. I think a big part of where you're going to predict them next season entirely depends on how much emphasis you put on that run they put together in the second half of last season. Yeah. Where, I mean, genuinely, it was a top 5 or 6 team in terms of, the amount of points they were able to get. How much of that was due to momentum and, they made themselves safe. And so they were sort of, I think from March onwards, it was they pretty much knew that they weren't going to get relegated, and it was just, okay, let's try and put a run together, finish as high as we can. It's different when you're trying to get into Europe and there's pressure to win, nearly every week. And I've spoken on this before. I think the business they've done, they've improved. I think Sven Botman is better than what they've got. I think Nick Pope's a good goalkeeper, although I wouldn't have necessarily said they needed a goalkeeper as their first signing. Yeah. I still think there's too many shortfalls in that team for them to be pushing for Europe. I don't rate any of their forwards apart from St. Maximin and Wilson, but Wilson's injured a lot. So I just don't think there's enough goals in the team. I think you've still got the likes of Shelby and Joel Linton that are going to be playing, significant minutes in midfield.
Joel Linton, can anyone make like transform player though?
I just don't think he's a good centre mid. I think part of it is that he was so poor up front. There's like a feel good factor about it. Like, it's nice to see someone like redeem themselves a little bit. But I don't think he's a good centre mid. I think he just works hard. It's admirable, isn't it? But
Sam Maximin as well, for all the talent he has, he still hasn't like done it. Like really.
No,
really
his best Premier League season, he hasn't hit 10 goals. So, I think people enjoy watching him, and he brings flair. And like, if you're an opposition defender, he obviously, occupies your thoughts, but he doesn't produce loads. So
it depends. It depends on who they sign. They're getting linked to Madison and Jack Harrison. Jack Harrison, I mean, is that really going to make much of a difference? But
and I also think Madison is
James Madison would be fantastic for them.
I think.
But where does he fit? Like that, it's an interesting one, Madison, because they're playing a 4-3-3 at the moment. I have him down as a 10. I know he's been playing as an 8 for Leicester, but I think when you watch him, he is more of a traditional number 10. So they'd probably have to change formation to fit him into the team.
Not necessarily. I think you could fit Madison in as a free 8 role.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
So
but he's a good player. He's no doubt better than what they've got. No doubt.
He's not a lot better than Bruno Guimaraes, but I think Guimaraes
play
CDM, and then you have Joel Linton.
I don't have 3 of them
on one side, and then Madison on the other side. That's a good midfield, but they have to buy a striker. Chris Wood was not a good decision. And
but they need a right winger as well.
It helped relegate Burnley though, so maybe.
Yeah, I also don't. I also think because Chris Wood had a bad 6 months, I think people are perhaps emphasising his, that as a bad decision. I actually disagree slightly. I think Chris Wood's actually quite valuable as an asset.
Is he a top 8 striker?
Callum, no, he's not. I don't think that.
Which is where we're ultimately talking about in terms of
I put them 9th. Yeah, I put them 9th. I don't think they're quite there. I think they will add some more signings, and we haven't caveated this.
No. So this is being recorded. Yeah, there's a month of the window left, and I'll say as well, I've got them 8th, and sort of on the same basis, I expect them to add before then.
Exactly. Yeah.
I actually have them 8 too.
Yeah, so I've got them 9th.
They will sign people.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly solid top half team. Having said that, they definitely need to add 1 centre midfielder, potentially 1 winger. I don't necessarily agree that they need a exactly. I don't necessarily agree
Almiron
that they
and Fraser aren't good enough. They shouldn't be getting minutes if you're looking to get top half. They're relegation.
One player in the midfield, if they don't sign someone, if they do, he'll most certainly go out on loan, is a player called Elliot Anderson, who's absolutely superb young player. I'd want to watch. Honestly, if he gets any game time between now and the start of the season, end of the transfer window, because he is staying until then, he might get loaned out to Bristol again, but he is superb. Genuinely really, really good. Sort of Mazzala, midfield. Sort of gets played on that left hand side or right hand side of midfield.
Okay.
Of centre mid, left centre mid, right centre mid.
Youth scout George, that's new. Didn't know you would know a lot about youth players.
Where did you have them, Fogel? Newcastle.
I have them. Where do I have them? 13th. Unlucky for some.
Maybe that's a little low, but I think that is more likely than them getting into the top 6. I just do not see that.
I looked at their team now. I don't think they're a top half.
No, neither do I. But I expect them to add. That's my caveat.
If they add, the other thing was they weren't really getting linked to anybody until today. It seems like the rumors from what I've seen, have just come out really, really recently. So yeah, it wasn't really, and there was
It just
talk of them
depends.
being
Like
quite, yeah.
before we finish this part, because we'll pause in between. Like, what would be a good season for Newcastle? Do we think? Like, if you're imagining the conversation between the owners and Eddie Howe, these are the targets for the season. Like, what are you setting those as? Is it top half?
Yeah,
I
break
don't,
into
Nah, it's
it
12.
all
12 for me.
depends on how you finish the
12.
season. I think
Yeah.
when you're a team like
But they
this.
finished. Hold on, they finished 11th last year, and they're going to
That's
strengthen the
misleading,
team.
though. Harry,
But
you know
it's not.
that it is. It's very misleading that
But
finish.
it's not
They did
because
very
by saying
well.
it's misleading, you're therefore saying that you think there are 11 better teams than them in the league if they strengthen. Do you honestly believe that?
Yeah,
Okay,
I
so-
think that, you know, I've got them ninth, but I think it's going to be tight. You know, you've got West Ham, you've got Leicester, you've got arguably Crystal Palace,
Yeah, who I've got above them,
and
West Ham and
Villa, who's
Leicester.
spending
I've got Villa above them.
pretty, you know, they're kind of the same kind of money at the moment, which is pretty insane. Not obviously last January, but yeah, I don't think Newcastle, they haven't gone out and signed Mbappe, have they? You know, it's not something
I know we were
where
lied to.
they're trying to get every Botman's an incredibly impressive signing and one they needed, but yeah, I think they'd be happy with 12. It seems like they're trying to look as though they're sustainable. Obviously, that's a bit of a red herring.
Nonsense.
It's clearly,
They don't need to be
it's a
sustainable.
facade. No, but
Yeah.
they need to appear
Yeah, of
sustainable.
course. Yeah,
Not
it's a front.
sacking Howe is sort of key to that, I suppose.
I don't think they'd sack him if they finished 12th, but I equally don't think that would be the target
If there's
for
a
the
better,
season.
if there's a better manager,
If
would they go and
Pochettino
get him?
was like,
Yeah,
"Hey guys,
yeah.
I want money,"
Mm.
You know?
I'd
Or
say
that.
top half. I'd say top half. I wouldn't put it any higher than that. I think that there are some good teams that finished above them last
Yeah.
season, and I think it's going to be difficult for them to finish ahead of them. As I said, I'm expecting them to do more business, and so that factors into my prediction with them. But it's really going to be interesting what they do this season because, as I said, I think they did really well the second half of last season, but those second half, most points collected since Christmas stats can be quite misleading sometimes. And so we'll see how they get on and see how they manage expectations because I think especially from the fan base, I think they'll be expecting to kick on. I'm not saying that expect to get into the top 6, top 7, but I think they'll be expected to go top half. And so we'll see how they get on. So that's it for the bottom half of last season. We'll be back tomorrow predicting our top half, including the Big Six. I'm sure there's going to be arguments. There's going to be disagreements galore. So tune back in tomorrow and we'll see how we get on.